It's November 2020, and you're watching The Lookout, a production of the Division of World Languages and Cultural Studies here at Minot State University. I'm your host, Samuel Stinson. Today we've also got Robert Kibler as co-host. We're going to talk in just a few moments with Thorpe Halloran in biology, but first we're going to include an interview right now with Alison McAfee. We talked with Alison McAfee recently. She's an instructor of broadcasting and professional communication here at MSU, and we spoke with her last Friday. Alison McAfee from Minot State University. She is an instructor of broadcasting and professional communication here at MSU. She teaches classes in persuasion and argumentation, PR and media writing, and mass media and society. Prior to joining MSU, McAfee spent more than 20 years in the private sector as an award-winning public relations strategist with expertise in corporate communications, government and media relations, issues and crisis management, employee communications, and event planning. Alison McAfee, thank you so much for being on the program today.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here.
So, Alison, I see here that the most recent position you had prior to coming to MSU, it looks like, was that you served as a senior communications lead for the Boeing Company in Washington, D.C.
Yes, that's right. I was serving in their Washington, D.C. office and had the opportunity to switch into employee communications there, working with a couple of the vice presidents of their divisions focused on internal governance and also spectrum management. And I got to learn a lot about 5G and other things that are happening within the spectrum world to connect all of the Internet of Things and everything that's going on around us here in the world of technology. Well, when I joined and graduated, I worked at an agency called, it's now Edelman Southwest, and we had Whole Foods Market as a client, but we also had a company called KPI, which was a medical products corporation. And so on one hand, I might be helping to promote an artisan farmer who's bringing their products to market. And then on the other hand, we're talking about different products for hospital beds. And so, I started my career there and ended up moving to New York several years after that. Due to a family move. And so, it was one of those things where it's start again and look for a job with a little bit of experience that you had. And so I got the opportunity to work at a television network for a little bit. It was a hunting and fishing channel. It's now NBC Sports. Hunting and fishing, I have to say, as it was not my true passion. I really enjoyed the opportunity to work in the television network, but that really was what launched me into kind of a sliding door moment. This opportunity came up to work at the airline industry in New York with JetBlue Airways. And since then, I kind of expanded from there, working in their public relations department, doing solely media relations and communicating with the media with all the new products that they were developing, as well as new cities that they were opening.
What does it mean to strategize with a client to get a public relations vision or plan? What does that mean?
A couple of things come to mind working at in-house. When you're in the public relations department, I kind of like to equate that to saying you're a reporter in the field for the company. And so a lot of times it is thinking about the stories that you can unearth within the organization that will help personalize the brand and help the customer really connect in unique ways. And so, for example, there was an up and coming blog at the time at JetBlue. It's still going now, and many other organizations utilize blogs to tell stories. But it was ways to go out in the field and talk to the different personnel within JetBlue. And so, for example, a gate agent and what their day-to-day life might look like versus what a flight attendant's day-to-day life might look like. And we did what we call a day in the life stories. We told those stories as profiles, and then we put them up on the blog.
What was it that initially drew you into public relations itself?
I really enjoy creativity and writing. I didn't realize at the moment, honestly, I don't know when I was going through college until I hit the campaigns class, did I really understand how much you could combine the creative aspect with writing for public relations. And so the ability to, I think, there's a lot of writing for positioning statements. So you write press releases. You also have the option to write talking points when executives of the company might be going on media interviews. You have to play devil's advocate a lot, and you have to think like a journalist and think about, think also like all of us are as consumers and customers, what would the person, why should they care, and what do they really need to know, and be prepared to answer the right questions. And so I think thinking about things from all of those different angles really drew me in. When you do PR campaigns, the creativity aspect comes in, and particularly when you get the opportunity to work for a flexible or entrepreneurial company who allows you to make fun stunt decisions, that really excited me as well. And I really love, I am a person who likes to come in and not know what to expect in my day. I like to be kind of surprised by what new avenue I might have to take, depending on the day's news or depending on what might have happened overnight. I also oddly like to plan for crisis. I don't like to experience them, but I do like to set the crisis plans in motion. And the more you plan in crisis communications, the better you are at dealing with them when they pop up. But it's kind of that high, I think it's a high energy environment that drew me into public relations in general.
Yeah, you always wonder when you're in an environment that is crisis after crisis after crisis. They often say sometimes you get addicted to crisis.
Yes.
Everyday life, a little too prosaic, without a fire to put out or something. Have you experienced that really the crisis management is where you've come to shine, and you have to get ready for the everyday world after it? Or
I do think that there's something to be said for once you go through crisis and experience how the team comes together, and how everybody really plays a part. It's kind of like a well-oiled machine if you've planned and practiced and done crisis drills, particularly in the airline industry. They say that the one thing that airlines don't compete on is safety, and that's true. And so all of the airlines, Delta, United, Hawaiian, across the board, all worked collaboratively to plan for crisis. And that's the large scale, the crisis you never want to happen, that might have fatalities. And then there's other crisis that you deal with that's a brand specific crisis, where, for example, there's a Real Housewives celebrity that's tweeting negatively about your brand, for example. But I have had some interesting scenarios in crisis where it just kicks in and you start planning. For example, I on Easter Sunday, about 5 or 6 years ago now, I was walking through a park. I was working for Hawaiian Airlines at the time, and I got a call from our systems operations department saying that there was a stowaway in one of our aircraft. A young teenager had climbed into the wheel well of an aircraft in California and miraculously flown all the way to Maui and survived. And it was an incredible story. And it was just immediately kicking in of all of the things that you need to think about in order to understand the story and protect the confidentiality of that person who stowed away, and how the media might obviously react to something like that. And we were all just thankful that he survived. It was a miracle. But thinking about the coordination at play for an airline in Maui, there's security concerns and security story, how this person got over a fence at the origin, and reaching out as a PR person, you make those relationships and connections in advance as well. So before a crisis happens, you want to just know who your colleagues are in the industry. So reaching out and talking to the airport PR person at each of those locations, and then thinking about the ways that law enforcement might be involved, and Federal Bureau's investigation in that situation. And you immediately start again, I think, reaching out and thinking who all would touch this type of scenario, and how do we all work together to make sure that we get all the information that we need. And so those types of things, again, yeah, I think it gets addictive, sadly. In a way, it's addictive to making sure that you help the industry or the company in the best way possible tell the truthful story, and the right one, and get the information out. Obviously, people are curious and interested to know what happens in those situations.
We have some students who are graduating soon and going off into the workforce. What are some pieces of advice that you would give them as they're attempting to transfer what they know in college and bring that to the workplace?
Mm-hmm. I would encourage them to stay persistent if they find an opportunity or a brand or an organization that they are really excited about and really want to be a part of, and to, continually, I guess, go out and try and apply for those jobs. Get an internship as well if you haven't already, for those seniors that might be starting to think about what they might want to do. I think an internship is always the best way to test the waters and figure out whether or not that's really going to be the right step for you as you go out with your degree. Me personally as well, I actually took an internship after I graduated and figured out a couple of things. So but ideally it's, within this perfect time of figuring out what you'd like to do, as far as going out into the real world.
Excellent. Well, Alison McAfee, thank you so much for helping us out and being on the program today.
Thank you. It's great talking with you.
We'll be right back. We have campus community dialogues coming up here, depending upon when you're watching this, on November the 18th. So we're recording this on Friday the 13th, lucky Friday the 13th, and campus community dialogues is next Wednesday. So on board to talk about this is Robert Kibler. Robert, can you tell us a little bit about the event?
The one this November 18th, Wednesday night, starting at 7 p.m. from your home. We'll live stream it from the MSU homepage. You just go to that homepage, click the button, and you're in. And the topic is statues of dead white men. Do they matter? And we have Professor Bethany Andresen from American History here at MSU. We have Bill Peterson, the director of the North Dakota State Historical Society. And we have Rob Port from Fargo Forum Newsfeed, and a local pundit who will address this issue. And everyone's welcome.
Sounds really interesting. So that is Wednesday, November 18th, Campus Community Dialogues, Statues of Dead White Men. Do they matter?
7 p.m.
7 p.m. Yeah. All right. We'll be right back. We are back now again. Now we're speaking with Thorpe Halloran. Thorpe Halloran is an assistant professor in biology at MSU. Thorpe is here today so we can ask him about his new grant, his scholarship, and his recent trip down the river. Thorpe, welcome to the Lookout podcast. So I hear tell that you've got a new grant. Could you talk about this a little bit, which one this was and what your proposal for this was?
The newest one, I guess, was through the governor's office, and that was with two colleagues of mine, Dr. Leff, the chair of the biology department, and our newest professor here, Dr. Joseph Pettit. That allowed us, it was about a little bit in excess of $70,000 that brings in a couple of video microscopes, which are really useful for live action, high quality resolution images specimens. Of course, it could also even be used on a book or any other thing. And then in addition to that, we brought in well in excess of 36 new computers, or the funding for that, to upgrade our computing ability for our students, specifically from a statistical standpoint. So we're pretty excited about that, and that was definitely a group effort. It's nice to be able to win a grant, but to be honest with you, it's more for our students in this circumstance, particularly because we could be kind of high flexing for quite a while here. Certainly we expect to next semester anyway.
I also wanted to ask you about your recent trip. You had a trip with students. If I remember right, this happened right before the pandemic started. Is that right?
My time taking students was taking them this past March to West Texas. And the goal of that trip was to expose students to desert ecosystems and also to float the Rio Grande, which we did through an outfitter for 4 days, 3 nights. And that included all the other, that doesn't rather include all the other camping and other things we did on the way down there. So it was a really good trip. I think our students learned a lot. It was a weird time to be traveling in the United States, particularly. I think the first night we were on the road is kind of when we hit critical mass with COVID, which was, let's say, March 10th. And so that made it kind of tricky, but the students were really good. It didn't really diminish the trip. It limited some of the things that we had lined up. Like, in other words, we lost the opportunity to go to the McDonald Observatory in West Texas, that's run by the University of Texas, because of, well, you already know why. And we lost some of the opportunities to work with regional institutions like Sul Ross University. But that being said, we still got to do cool things like see the Marfa Lights, float the Rio Grande. But it was a really wonderful trip, and I was really lucky. We had, I think, 8 students in that class, and they all performed really well. They were all required to paddle their own canoe. We went in groups of 2 people per canoe, and that really went quite well. So I was surprised how well students adapted, although perhaps I shouldn't have been, given the circumstances and the overall change in atmosphere. Literally, the physical atmosphere here when we left was maybe 20, and by the time we left Texas, it was close to 90 degrees about 10 days later.
But they had a great time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They were really great.
Learned a lot just from the atmosphere and the trip itself.
Yeah, and I learned a lot myself. You know, the planning for that trip took a little bit of time, and we cooked all our own meals. We were, fully on our own, and even when we floated the river, we had the guides there to help us. But it was a lot of fun. I think the students showed an incredible amount of resourcefulness, and also too, the group gets pretty tight during a trip like that, simply because we're around one another 24 hours a day. And of course, the trip just to drive from Minot to Marfa, Texas, was well in excess of 36 hours in the car.
Oh, it's a lot of time to get to know each other.
Yeah.
I know I had one of your students for that trip in one of my composition classes, and she could practically concentrate on nothing but dreaming about that trip. So I know it'll stick in my memory because it was the last trip that got taken by MSU students before we closed down. So you barely got out of the door and got these students a memorable experience.
Of course, students had vested a lot of their own time into it. We did some fundraising before we left to help pay for expenses, and the students were excellent at that. And there just wasn't really any one aspect of the trip that students didn't really excel in, other than the fact that we all had to adapt to some itinerary changes because of COVID. But hey, that's part of it.
All right, you had a pizza night, didn't you, where people showed up at one of the local pizza parlors, and if they bought a pizza, a certain percentage of the cost went to your trip?
Right, we had 2 businesses.
Yeah, it's really great. Yeah.
Yeah, we had 2 businesses. I should plug them. I mean, they deserve total credit. Spicy Pie gave us a percentage of their sales on one day and at lunchtime, and it was really incredibly nice of them. And then Uncle Mattio's did the same thing, where myself and some of the students went in and we bussed tables one night, and we had a lot of people come in from the university and help us fundraise there. So both those businesses, those local businesses, were incredibly gracious with us. And the truth of the matter is that I didn't expect that kind of level of support. and I know our students and myself are really grateful for it. Both those institutions, so to speak, really stood by their commitment to the university and our community. I thought it was pretty great.
So you mentioned that the group got to see the Marfa lights.
Mm-hmm.
I did want to ask a little bit about the ecosystem. So I always imagine this is a type of, I guess in Star Trek terms, kind of an away mission, right? You all went down to West Texas, you got into the ecosystem. So what kind of life forms did you all find there in West Texas in the ecosystem?
Well, I mean, it's desert, so I can give you a good anecdote. So we carried all our own food with us, like I said, and one night one of the bins was slightly open, and so we had a pack of javelinas that kind of look like wild pigs come into the camp and try and break in to one of the plastic bins where the food was. It was bread, and so they caused quite a ruckus. Everybody had to wake up at about 1 o'clock in the morning and chase them out of the camp. So we saw a decent amount of wildlife. I mean, not as much as I hoped, simply because of the fact that we weren't able to go into Big Bend National Park when we wanted to, because the government was a little bit unsure of how they wanted to give accessibility to public areas in general. We saw a ton of birds, a lot of migratory birds too. Javelina. We saw quite a bit. Another thing, I think, another aspect, since you're talking about life forms, I guess, students were able to really see a completely different cultural aspect of the United States, which, you would get anywhere you went if we went from North Dakota to Michigan. But this one was a real acceleration in differences, particularly because of the fact that it's Mexican American. So the food, the type of grocery stores, every aspect of West Texas is pretty dissimilar from every component of North Dakota, and not in a bad way, just in differences in food and culture, climate. We would have had a really neat opportunity at Sul Ross University to be able to take a look at their natural history collection, but of course those things change, and by the time we got to that university itself too, that had been shut down as well. And that was, I think, that shut down within maybe 48 hours of us arriving in Texas, which I want to say is the 13th of March, maybe.
I remember once you saying that you had a formal academic background in the humanities.
I do.
You do, deep in, don't you?
I did, and I'm shamelessly plugging away here. I got an undergraduate degree in history with a minor in political science from Texas A&M. So yeah, I do have a little bit of background, but not as robust as you guys.
But nevertheless, this trip seems to kind of fit the mold, both not only a biology trip, but also one that has like anthropological elements to it, and the humanities are all over it. So
yeah, absolutely.
Well done.
Well, thanks. There is something neat I wanted to talk to you about very quickly, both of you, since we're just kind of freelancing here, is that I'd like to pull multiple disciplines across our campus: humanities, foreign languages, biology, chemistry, and do some summer excursions for our students. And I think that's another thing that helps faculty members work together, and it gives students really unique off-campus experiences that are fun, and also give them college credit. And you kind of kill two birds with one stone. It kind of expands their understanding of the world. Plus, it's definitely a heck of a lot of fun for professors as well.
And I'll throw out there, when I was sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, well, we did start on campus here the Horizons Unlimited program run through the International Studies here, and we did that for years, and get a mix of students from science, from math, from the humanities, from English, from history, and we went to Africa, we went to China, we went to all through Europe, and ended up in Athens and many different places. And it's time that we get a new sort of renewal, a new push to do more of this, and I hope you'll be part of that.
I totally agree, and I was aware of that. I forgot you told me that before, and those things they really help recruit students and retain students, and they also give a lot of growth for students too. And I think Sam's going to give us an anecdote in his own life, but I think a lot of times undergraduates grow the quickest is when they're off campus. Maybe that's a summertime job, but maybe it's a field trip. I'm excited for future trips in biogeography, but I'm also hopeful for future collaborations with other faculty members not only in this department, but across campus to do those kind of things that we've just nibbled on here.
Yeah, let's get talking about it. We'll do it.
So Thorpe, I have one last question. What has your scholarly interest been like these days?
So my first year has been involved primarily in beginning to assemble those data sets, going out in the field collecting. So one of the things I regularly do with students, we did it last week, I went out backpack electrofishing. So that's a technique where you go into water, obviously you're wearing waders, and you shoot off pulsed electricity. It can be DC or AC, and you can pick the voltage and obviously the cycles, and that stuns other vertebrates, unsurprisingly, getting hit by electricity in water. And that allows us to collect fishes. And that's, I think, one nice thing that I've been able to train students in how to do that. But it hadn't been too much effort to train them that are really enthusiastic about those opportunities. And so, we just put on the backpack shocker. It looks like something from Ghostbusters, for lack of a better word. And you shoot electricity, and then you gather up fishes. They tetanize, they're stunned. And then we sacrifice them, and we'll go through the process of learning their physiology, documenting what species are abundant and what species are absent in certain areas of the state. And also, too, I guess one other thing, it builds up real life field experiences for students. I see the enthusiasm that students have and the excitement when they start shocking up fish out of water, and they're really excited, and that rubs off on you and keeps your enthusiasm as a professor really high, and you never know what you'll get. So when you go out and collect, and I've been really lucky again here, I probably have a core now of about 10 or 15 students that I've been lucky enough to train in our department, and so pretty soon that'll morph, if I'm lucky enough to get some funding for the summer, to go out and do field collections in late May and into early June, and pay those students, but also pay them with life experience too, I'm hoping, and then allow me to work with the state to catalog some fishes in understudied rivers here in western North Dakota.
All right, well, Thorpe Halloran, thank you so much for being on the program and helping us out today.
No problem. I appreciate both of you giving me a couple minutes out of your evening to talk to me. So I look forward to hearing the podcast, and if you're interested in going out in the field and sampling with me, you let me know. I mean, you're more than welcome to come and see what we do. I'd be excited to have both of you come.
Oh, thanks. That sounds great. Well, we've reached that time in the podcast where we have to end the program, but we want to thank you again for watching. And as we generally say at this point, this is Minot State University. Be seen, be heard, be inspired. Local and online presentation of the MSU Lookout has been brought to you by KMSU, Channel 19, and Minot, North Dakota. If you're watching us online, please take a moment to like the KMSU channel on YouTube. There's also a playlist of episodes of The Lookout in case you need to catch up. And feel free to leave a comment below this episode telling us what you think. And finally, don't forget to share this video with others. Thanks again, and be inspired.